Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McKay, last year you testified before the Natural Resources Committee. Must seem like ages ago. It was before the spill. This is what you had to say about the role of technology and the oil and gas industry, and I quote, "The energy industry isn't usually classified as a high-tech business, but it truly is. This technology has been instrumental in protecting the environment. Today's offshore oil drilling technology bears about as much resemblance to what was available in the 1960s as a rotary dial telephone does to an iPhone." That was a very interesting comparison. Let's look at it to get the picture of the contrast. First, we have a picture of a rotary dial phone, and then an iPhone. Clearly, there's a difference in technology, and we certainly all benefit from those remarkable advances. Now another picture, a picture I'm very familiar with, a picture of the boom used in the Santa Barbara oil spill in 1969. That was about the era of the rotary telephone. Now here's a picture of the boom used in the Gulf today, 40 years later. Do you see a big difference between the boom technologies used in these two pictures?
I don't see a big change in boom technology. There have been tremendous changes in technology and how boom is deployed and how satellite imagery helps deploy resources into the best possible places.
Yes, we do have satellite imagery now, but that was the era of the rotary telephone. We now live in the era of the iPhone, and it looks a lot on the shoreline of the Gulf as it looked to me in Santa Barbara in 1969. The two cleanup booms, however they're deployed, they looked and act pretty much the same. Would you agree?
That's true, although there are sorbent.
Well, let me show you another set of pictures. Here's a picture of some workers cleaning up the oil in Santa Barbara in 1969. Now let's look at a picture of a worker mopping up with his own two hands, bare hands I should add, oil that had reached the Gulf shore. Again, I don't see a lot of difference in technology between the cleanup in Santa Barbara and the cleanup now underway in the Gulf. In fact, I don't see much difference at all. Booms, workers mopping up by hand thousands of barrels of spilled oil. So, Mr. McKay, I get that the industry spends a lot of time and effort on exploration and extraction and lobbying. But my problem is that you don't seem to have spent very much on accident prevention and you seem to have made few, if any, real developments in oil spill cleanup. We're talking about 40 years later. So here's my question. What's BP's plan to contain the inevitable accidents from your offshore rigs, the rest of them that are operating out there, which are drilling in even harsher and more difficult conditions? What is it going to look like 10 to 20 or 40 years from now when there's another huge spill to see booms being lined up in the defense for our coast? Is that what we're going to see then? Will we still be relying on thousands of cleanup workers mopping up beaches by hand? Will that be considered state-of-the-art cleanup technology and response like it is today and like it was 40 years ago?
Well, we've talked a lot about prevention today, so I won't go into that. But in terms of spill response, I think one area that we will learn from this incident is the ability to do more subsea intervention.
Well, okay. But I'm talking about the oil that comes to the surface, because let me switch to a May 12th Oversight and Investigation Subcommittee and a Trans-Oceans document, and I quote from that document, "The recovery rate of oil under the best circumstances rarely exceeds 15%. And that's 15% of all the oil that reaches the surface of the water. It's not a very impressive rate of recovery, but more disturbing is the fact that the rest of the proposed techniques are not particularly effective either. For example, Chevron's, BP's response plan with the chairman held up earlier, cautioned that some marsh cleanup techniques destroy, in this quote, destroy much wildlife and destroy marsh areas. And here's Shell's oil spill response plan, describing an approach that stands out from the rest. Section 13 of the Shell plan states that oil will accumulate on places like sandbars and barrier islands. The plan states that this can be, and again I quote, very helpful and cost-effective as a way of collecting the oil. So, Mr. Odum, my final question. Does Shell really believe that it is, quote, very helpful when oil washes up on barrier islands?
Clearly not, and I think the statement is simply meant to go to the fact that in terms of an ability to stop further encroachment and clean up, that's what's intended by the statement.
Do you have any other information? If I had time, I would ask each of you, is this the state of affairs for cleanup today on oil spills?
I do think the answer is yes. You're seeing the deployment of the technology today to respond to this spill. Yeah.
That's the best we can do. Thank you. Yield back.
Great. Gentlelady